Hello friends, and welcome to Sustainable Prepping, your home for fear-free emergency preparedness and a sustainable life. My name is Brecky, and today we are continuing our series on can you be a prepper and be woke? If you're new here, I want to say a great big welcome. Glad you found my little slice of the internet. Don't forget to like this video and click the bell icon and subscribe to this channel. This lets you know when I have new videos out. And when you click that bell icon, click all, because sometimes they only send you some of the videos I put out. So I don't want you to miss anything. Click the all so you get all notifications for all the videos. So, can you be a prepper and be woke? Well, let's start with what does woke actually mean? This is something that gets thrown around on the internet, kind of like the term snowflake, and people kind of know what it means, but they don't really know what it means. So let's discuss what woke means. Woke is this idea that a person with privilege has awoken to the fact that they have privilege and that there are systems and cycles of oppression that affect people around them and themselves. This awakening shows them that they are, whether they are willing or not, they participate in systems and cycles that do keep others oppressed. To be woke then is to recognize injustices that people face on the basis of race, religion, sexual orientation, gender identity, ability, nation of origin, or socioeconomic status, just to name a few. An element of wokeness is the fact that the person who has become woke, a person with some privileges, recognizes that they need to become advocates to help dismantle these systems of oppression. They're also reforming their own views of the world the more they see this interconnected web of injustice that affects people differently. Now, I could do a totally in-depth video on circles of oppression and how you can have privilege in one area, and the thing that gives you privilege in one space actually is an oppression in another. And if you're interested in learning more about that, you leave me a comment and I will tell you all of this. However, for the sake of this video, to be woke means you're a person with privileges who recognizes that not everybody has the privileges that you have, and you think that kind of sucks. So one of the things that I have noticed over the last couple of years is that being woke is actually being used as a slur by people who aren't woke. There are some communities that don't believe in systemic oppression, and they don't believe that there are systems that keep some people marginalized, and therefore anyone who is woke is buying into some conspiracy lie and is taking away agency from individuals who have called out oppression for some of the reasons that they aren't successful or they have challenges. I want to pause in this moment and say that's actually a really interesting conversation I think we should all be having. What's the difference between systemic oppression and personal agency? If we can have a nuanced conversation on that, like a legitimate one where it doesn't result in name calling, we could do a whole hell of a lot of good. But for the time being, let's just talk about the monolith. The woke community tends to vote progressive. The anti-woke community tends to vote conservative. That's a total generalization and creates monoliths that I don't like, but we only have a few minutes in this video. So if you are someone who is woke, who believes in systems of oppression and understands the world to have an entire interwoven web in which some people have a whole lot of privilege, those people tend to be white, male, and straight, and able-bodied and Christian, Protestant Christian, and everybody else is a part of a web of injustice that was built by a bunch of dead, white, straight, Protestant Christian dudes. What do you do when you want to enter the prepping space? Since most people in the prepping space tend to think of woke as a slur. Well, the first thing I want to say, and I've said it in all of these videos, is that if you have emergency preparedness, you are a prepper, right? If you're someone who does emergency preparedness, if you have food storage, water storage, first aid storage, bug out bags, whatever, you're a prepper. And none of these identity pieces really matter. But I keep making these videos because I think it's important to have the conversation about the prepper subculture and whether or not people who don't conform to the stereotype of a prepper really are welcome. I've done videos in the past on whether you can be a liberal and a prepper, whether you can be a minimalist and a prepper, whether you can be a feminist and a prepper. And routinely, I get both comments of people who are like, yay, thank you, this is how I'm getting my inroad into this thing of prepping, as well as people who tell me I'm stupid and that conservatives are going to have liberal slaves, which, you know, definitely points to this whole not being woke and issues around recognizing systemic oppression. But all of that aside, I think it's important that all of us start to recognize systems of oppression as well as personal agency. Again, I think that there's a nuanced conversation here that could be really, really beneficial for like everyone in North America. Here's the thing, preppers actually understand the failure of systems and the way that systems don't actually serve people. I mean, that's a part of why preppers prep. We understand that the government is incapable of saving everybody in a major crisis. We can turn to Hurricane Katrina, and the absolute abysmal response of the emergency services for a host of reasons. But if you dive into and look at what actually happened, the communities that got the least aid over time are communities of color. They are the communities that are least able to pay out of pocket for repairs. So we know that some communities are already at a lack. We already know that there are some communities who can barely make it today, let alone in an apocalyptic SHTF situation. One of the things we need to really address is that poverty is not a moral failing. A lot of people are born into poverty, and it's really hard to break out of poverty. You cannot just save all your pennies and not buy a cell phone and escape poverty. It's just not that easy, especially with the housing market going absolutely bonkers and people paying 50% of what they make for housing. It's insanity. So if we can get away from certain identities as moral failings, wokeness as a slur, and look at the fact that preppers do recognize that there are systems that fail us, systems that, should they work, would actually help liberate people, help them maintain their agency, preppers can begin to see that, yeah, there are broken systems. And there are people who are caught in those broken systems. And look, maybe the prepping community as a whole is never going to get on board with being woke. And maybe that word is going to always be a slur. But here's the deal. You are welcome. And the community doesn't change unless different kinds of people join it. At the end of the day, you liberating yourself and you empowering yourself allows you to lead in a crisis. And if you are someone who is woke that recognizes that there are webs of injustice, you can begin to plan ahead and empower your entire community. You can begin to be in a position of strength so that when SHTF happens, it's not just people who don't believe in systemic racism and other issues that are in a position of strength and power. You too would be in a position of strength and power. This means that you would then be able to advocate for those who maybe aren't able to advocate for themselves or don't yet have the resources to do their own advocacy. Everyone who can prep should, not just for you, but for your community. And as you learn more about emergency preparedness, as you are empowered to keep your power in emergency preparedness, share that knowledge and help empower others in your community. Recognize the limitations that some communities have, whether it's people who lack mobility, who need support because their bodies don't work the way an able-bodied person does. Whether it's people who, because of their religion or because of their sexual identity, have been rejected by their own families. I don't know what your situation is and why it is you may or may not be woke. But what I do know is that the more people stay empowered in a crisis, the better off the most marginalized are going to be. If you're someone who cares about marginalized people, be prepared now so that you can be an advocate for them later. Help them prepare now so that they can be empowered for later. So now I want to know what you think. Are you woke? Are you down with that term? Are you anti-woke? I guess that would make you asleep? I don't know. What do you think about wokeness and about systemic oppression? I'd really like to know what you think and where this intersects with emergency preparedness. We're going to be talking about hard things on this channel alongside learning about emergency preparedness. So I'd love your comments and your questions respectfully down in the comments. If you want to talk some more, you can find me over on Instagram and you can join our Facebook group. The details are all going to be in the description. As always, friends, I hope that you are taking steps to stay empowered. Until the next video, happy prepping.